Okay, so let's get started. So we're going to have a look at this task 2 task here. It's a type of task that we haven't actually done in one of these live classes before. Some people see it as the easiest option, but there are some difficulties or some questions that people have about it sometimes. So I'll just read this out for everybody. In some cultures, children are often told that they can achieve anything if they try hard enough. What are the advantages and disadvantages of giving children this message? So, my first question, as always, for you guys is what type of question is this? Good, we've got it from Justin and Gurkurat and Manaz there. We have a discussion essay here, something we haven't really looked at before. Now, we can see this is a discussion because, well, there's a couple of clues that give it away. First of all, we have this very clear conjunction and, it's not an or, but an and. And also, you're just basically not asked for your opinion in the question itself. So, as a result of that, we don't give an opinion on the level of, I think this is a good thing, or I think this is a bad thing. Some people have asked me before, well, you still have to give an opinion. It's an opinion about what you think the advantages are and what you think the disadvantages are. Yes, on a level, yes. Like everything is an opinion. There's pretty much nothing that's completely objective except like the laws of physics, things like that. But basically, you're not being asked to choose a side. That's what defines an opinion essay. Really, you're being asked to present an opinion that somebody could disagree with. But here, with the advantages and disadvantages, you're putting them out sort of as a matter of fact. You're not putting them out for somebody to disagree with. Yes, and as Nessar's put there as well, we have to look at both sides. The other interesting thing about this discussion question, well, actually, we'll come to it in a moment. First of all, let's go through the key words here. What are some of the key words in this question? Aaron Kumar, just to get back to you there, you can consider them as both. You know, they can be an addition to your online classes on Udemy, and they will strengthen your understanding of the essay basics too. So yeah, both there. Okay, so what have we got here? Some cultures. Yeah, I guess you could put some cultures here. I don't think this is like an essential part. It's what often appears in these essays, you know, in some parts of the world, in some places, etc., etc. I will maybe highlight this, but only in the sense that I feel like we should, uh, let's say, respond to it in the introduction. We can reference it in the introduction, but the cultural aspect is not that crucial here, let's say. Um, so let's say achieve anything. Yes, definitely children and achieving anything. Oh, wrong one there. So children, they can achieve anything. And this is when they're told this as well, usually, you know, by their parents, but that's by the by, when if they try hard enough. So this one's a pretty clear one about the keywords, and as some of you have already mentioned there, I can see it from Lida and Svetlana, and a few of others of you. We've got advantages and disadvantages. Of course, very important in terms of defining it as a discussion essay, but what's a really important letter here as well? Yes, Justin has it there. It's we have two plurals. So one mistake you can make here is just giving one advantage and one disadvantage to the question. But really, what they're asking for here are plurals. This is partly just a matter of English. It's quite difficult to present this sentence as a singular. It sounds strange to say what is an advantage and what is a disadvantage. But no matter, it's quite good if we can respond to it with plurals anyway. I think it's quite useful. I've got somebody's microphone on, by the way. I think is it Lynn? She's just occasionally coming up as somebody talking. So just Lynn, somebody, I think, if you can make sure your microphone is switched off, just so that we're on track. Good. Okay. Is it possible to have an advantage and disadvantage essay? Yeah, Nichelle, I've never actually seen that. I've never seen a question that says what is an advantage and what is a disadvantage. And that's, as I say, more due to the restrictions of the English language than anything else. It just sounds strange to say it. You might have something that says something like, oh, actually, no, I can't think of an answer. But try and offer two of each side if you can. Okay, so let's go from here and consider what we need to do for the plan. We don't need, before we jump into the ideas, just a quick reminder, we don't need an opinion here. If we had an opinion, we'd have to think about the order, we'd have to think about coming up with opinion. I'd have to ask you, what do you think? Is this good or bad? But I don't have to do this here. So instead, we're just going to follow this through. And by the way, with a task like this, it doesn't really matter whether you start with the pros or the cons. To me, it makes more sense to start with the pros just because that's the order of the essay itself. But you could do it either. It shouldn't really make a difference. So we're going to start with the advantages. So now I want some ideas from you guys. What do we think? What are some of the advantages of telling children that they can achieve anything if they try hard enough? We've got one from Radia there already. It can, careful Radia, you want raise there rather than rise. Raise being the transitive verb, you add an object. It can raise their self-confidence. So raise self-confidence, motivation, optimize their results. It motivates them. Driven to work hard. All of this is really good. I wonder, so let's look at that idea that Manaz has got there of working hard. Absolutely, all of these ideas are excellent, but let's focus on the one of working hard. What is it called when you have, let's say, a personality trait that allows you to work hard, where you feel strongly about working hard, that you think it's a good thing? It's called a work, it begins with an E, work ethic. Well done, Justin. Good. So we have a work ethic. Now, your work ethic can be good or bad. In fact, those are not the adjectives I would use. I wouldn't say good or bad, but there is a strong collocation. In fact, there's a bit of a clue there already, but there's a good adjective that we can put before work ethic to put it in a positive light. What adjective might go before work ethic? Strong, yeah. We've got it from Pia there, Svetlana. Svetlana's got good, but Pia's got it there. It's a strong, this is a really strong collocation, a strong work ethic. So you could say that delivering this message to children helps them to, let's say, generate or develop a strong work ethic. Now, you do not need at this point to carry on the sentence and say why. It's better to split up your sentences here so that you take them step by step by step. Don't try to include too much. So you've got clear. One of the advantages of A is B. One of the advantages of giving children this message is that it develops a strong work ethic. And then you go on to, well, if we remind ourselves here of the, let's see if I can find this here, the building body paragraphs. Always bring this one up just in case people haven't seen it. But so we start with that T, which is the topic sentence. Then we move on to either a support sentence or as an explanation sentence really, or an example. Now you do not have to go and start with the support. You might find it easier to go with an example here. I feel this particular paragraph would benefit better from an example sentence because to me, the work ethic developing from this, it's best to explain it with an example. What example could you give? Imagine you've got two children. One is given the message, one is not given the message. What might happen? Could you give me a scenario where one develops a stronger work ethic than the other? Think about, particularly because they're children, what are they doing a lot when they're children? Good. Yes, Manaz, you've got the one side there. One child might give up easily if he's not given the message, and one child might do the opposite. He might persist. He might carry on. He might work harder. So you've got, and why would they do this? Give me an example of where they would give up easily. What are they What are they doing? What are they preparing for? Think about the age that they are. Think about what they spend most of their time doing. Be more specific, Gurve, if you can. The best thing about examples is if you can be as precise as possible. What kind of project? Again, Assis, that's kind of vague there. Reach the dream. Studies, Elizabeth, you're on a better path there. Be even more specific than studies. Which subject are we talking about? Science is good. Maths is good. Let's go with maths. So we could say that they're preparing for a math test. Let's say, you know, with maths tests, maths if you're using the British English, math if you're using the American English. Really up to you. I'm just going to write maths test here. Mathematics if you want to write the long version, but that's not exactly required. So yeah, maths tests. Let's say give up versus I think what somebody used the word before. Yeah, Nishkal, there, perseverance is a really nice term to use here, perseverance. So we have perseverance. Now, if you've got somebody that gives up very quickly versus somebody that perseveres, what's going to be the result? So the R is result, remember? What is the result of persevering? What is the result of being told this message and as a result persevering? Exactly. They will succeed in the maths test. They're more likely to anyway. They won't remember to avoid generalization, avoid over certainty, but you use that likely to. Sorry, I've got a new keyboard here, so I'm just working at getting used to it. Likely, more likely to succeed. In fact, we should really have the opportunity show our ability to use comparatives as well. So they're more likely to succeed. Not only this, but you could. This is where you've got the advantage here with the plural. So we've done the one. Now we need the additional one. So we can call this T2. What is another advantage? Yes, Khalud, this is all being recorded. You will be sent an email after the class with a link to the recording. So don't worry about getting everything down now. So have we got any other ideas about an advantage? Goal-oriented, bounce back quite quickly. Are they more able to bounce back? Say self-esteem. Okay, yeah, I think Pia's idea there is probably you've got to consider which ones are going to be the easiest to develop as well, the easiest to explain. And I think raising self-esteem, that one to me seems quite intuitive, and because of that, it seems to me that would be the easiest to develop. So it would raise self-esteem. Now, tell me, Pia or anybody else, why? Why would being told this raise your self-esteem? Being confident in what they do. Yeah, it's because if you're told if you put the effort in, you will get a result, then you're going to be confident that your efforts are going to be worthwhile. You won't give up because you don't think, oh, well, what's the point? I'm not going to succeed anyway. But yes, so there's this element of confidence, but come back to self-esteem. Remember to try and link your ideas really closely together. So yes, you're confident in what you do. What's that got to do with self-esteem? You've got to try and link it back in. So yes, um, confidence in efforts. I guess you could just say something like, okay, I'm going to leave a word here. We'll come back to this later. I am going to come back to this. I wonder whether somebody can already be thinking about what that word might be. It really means being in control of your own destiny, being in control of your choices, free will, in a sense that you have control over your life. It begins with an A, and it's definitely more towards the Band 9 level vocabulary. If nobody gets it now, don't worry, we'll come back to it later. But hopefully you can see what it's suggesting. It's not achievement, it's not acknowledgement, and it's not ambition. But we'll come back to that. Maybe somebody can get it by then. Let's come to the disadvantages. What might be one of the disadvantages of telling children this message? So high risk. risk, Nishkal, that's good, but risk is like another way of saying disadvantage. You've got to be more specific than say high risk. What is the risk? That would be where you're going towards. Wasting time without talent. Yeah, I guess you could put that again. To me, it's a wasting time might be a support sentence rather than the point itself. Playful, depression, frustration. Yeah, so there's a lot of like stress, a lot of negative words here. Those words to me, they all could link into the support rather than the actual point itself. So this the stress, the frustration, that all comes after you put something else out. And I think that all comes from this message giving you. I wonder if somebody can fill in the gaps here. This is quite a long one. Unrealistic is the first word. Well done, Elizabeth. Unrealistic world view. Good, Barak, good Karat as well. So basically, you're having an unrealistic perspective on life. If you constantly believe that, you know, your efforts will give you anything you want, and then that doesn't happen, then that would lead to stress, to frustration, to arrogance, to depression, all of those words that you guys mentioned before. Let's do a similar structure here. In fact, let's come in and we'll bring in those words there. Basically stress, frustration, etc. etc. We'll just come up with them later. Now, give me an example. Why would this happen? Exactly. So Nessel's got the right idea there. We're trying to link all of these ideas together really cleanly, really clearly to improve that coherence and cohesion. So we got instant gratification. Don't have money. So yeah, it could be related to financial limitations. What's another one? So financial limitations. What else? Education, educational. What's another one? Physical, exactly. And then you can then put in that word limitations. Do you know what I think? I think we'll drop this stress frustration. And I actually think this is more of a support sentence. I think this goes to, this is because some people face unalterable financial, educational, and physical limitations. Then again, I want with the example to see something more specific. Like up here, we had a maths test that was very specific about, imagine a single child facing a specific scenario, a specific situation. Think about sport. What if a child, a particular sport, I don't want to help you too much. Can I come up with something there? Swim without training. That's a nice one. Imagine they want to become like a professional. Well, bear in mind, Nishao, as well, they are going to be training. They will have the training because they're thinking effort, effort, effort. They want to try hard enough and they think they'll succeed. So the training is there, but are they going to become a professional? And if not, why not? Unhealthy, Shane. Shane, that's a good idea. Unhealthy individuals, but you've got to be more specific than unhealthy. For instance, let's imagine a basketball player. What unalterable physical condition do you need to be a professional basketball player? No matter what effort you put in, you have to have height. You have to have a good, I should say a good height. You have to be tall, exactly. So sufficient height, which falls under these physical limitations. It may not be educational, it may not be financial in this case, but in this case, absolutely the physical limitations. It doesn't matter how hard you work, you're not going to make yourself any taller. And because of that, then you can probably squeeze in the idea of frustration and stress at the end there. Then, what do we need to do now? Yeah, Svetlana, is you're absolutely right. It's not always about height, but certainly if you're, you know, you want to be in the NBA and you're 5'5" or whatever it is, you're unlikely to. I mean, I'm 5'11" and I'm never, I could work as hard as I want. I'd never be an NBA star. So there's lots involved. Height is just one thing. There's lots of, you know, your anticipation, your agility, lots of different things that you can't alter to a level that you would like to. Conclusion, not yet, Barak. So conclusion, that's too early. We want to, as P has put there, T2, we want another point. So consider this, unrealistic worldview. This can link in. It's still part of the unrealistic worldview, but it's another disadvantage to that. Here, we've been looking at ourselves. What might be a disadvantage with looking at it to other people? Overconfident, disappointment, arrogance. I think Elizabeth's closer to what I'm thinking of here with arrogance. There can be a sense of, well, what's the word I'm looking for? Good. Judgmental. And you can say judgmental. Yeah, let's go with judgmental here. Why would a person be judgmental if this is what they believed? Good. Yeah, Barak, they're critical of other people, but why? Why would they think this? Kulbashan, I think I'm getting the name right there, exactly has it right. They're interpreting it wrongly. I mean, we can do better with the vocabulary potentially, but you got the right idea. They're arriving at conclusions which are unfair. So if they think that they can achieve anything if they try hard enough, they're going to apply this to other people. So people who are unsuccessful in life, maybe they've got a particular failure, maybe if they're in poverty, who do those children think is to blame for those problems? As Barak says, it must be them. It must be, they only have themselves to blame. So we can say, so like unsuccessful, so failure, self to blame. Again, try and not spend too much time on the plan. I always do end up doing this with you guys, but remember when you're actually doing this yourself, make sure you only spend 5 minutes on the plan. And then, you can add a little bit more support. You could even come back to this here, that financial, educational. In fact, let's do this. Because we've got lots of points here. We'll put this here. And then we'll put this frustration element as a result. So notice we can move things around very quickly, very easily. Unrealistic worldview, for example, basketballer, height can only do so much. Result, frustration, stress. In addition, you could become more judgmental, think people only have themselves to blame, because this doesn't consider the financial, educational, and complex physical factors that influence these things. Okay, great. There's our plan. We can now move into the E, Elizabeth, is just example. Try to not mix it up with explanation. I usually use S for explanation just to mean support, but E is just example. Even if I wrote EX, that wouldn't really help because you've got example and explanation. So just write the E there. Okay, let's move over. And somebody's got their microphone on. Just want to make sure everybody has their microphones off. Make sure you check. Let's move into the introduction. How could we begin? Some people argue. Now remember, this is not an opinion essay. So using this some people argue thing may not be ideal here. I think it's just, if you notice that the task itself doesn't use some people argue, we just want to rephrase what we've got here. Let's switch the order around here. Children are often told. Why don't we start with this part? So here they've gone in some cultures. Over here, children are often told. How could we rephrase children are often told? Manaz has got children are often advised to. Be careful, Manaz, you've got a C in there when you want an S, advised, rather than advised. Advice is the noun, advise with the S is the verb. But you could say that. Let's use something sort of that uses both. It is common to, let's say it's common for children to be. And in fact, I'm not sure about advised. Advice is like giving advice. This is not really advice. It's like giving a positive message. I feel like it's a bit different to advising. For children to be taught, maybe told, Yeah, Khulud, as I mentioned to you earlier, there will be a recorded version of this session. It will be sent to you in an email afterwards. For children to be instilled, taught, let's go, I'm going to push you for more. Okay, what's another word for message? Beginning with I. Good, Justin. Now, you wouldn't say taught with the idea. What's a good collocation here? You're welcome, Khulud. Provided with the idea. Good. Another good collocation, another good verb is presented. You present an idea to someone. So that's fine as well. You could do provided, you could do presented. This is all about trying to improve your range of vocabulary, so I'm just going to suggest both. So it's common for children to be presented with the idea that. Now, this is a tricky bit. How can you paraphrase this? Anything is possible. Saddam, that's what I thought as well. Anything is possible. I feel like it's just not quite precise enough. This is more about achievement. So anything is achievable. P is probably a little bit better there. Anything is achievable. Let's go with that. The problem with saying anything is achievable is it kind of takes it away from them and just means in general when it should be more about them. But I think it's okay. It is common for children to be presented with the idea that anything is achievable. If you were to maybe paraphrase it in a different way, I personally would keep the they can. It's kind of presses on the idea of empowerment and just change the achieve to a different verb. And I saw a good one before beginning with, there you go, Toby Lee has got it there. They can accomplish anything. That's a nice way to paraphrase here. They can accomplish anything. Now, how do we paraphrase this part? If they try hard enough. What is it called to try hard? What is that called? If persist, if they persist, you might go with if they put a lot of effort. Well, Toby's got the right idea there with the word effort. I think effort is good. But let's use our knowledge of collocations again. If they something, what is the collocation with effort? What verb? They make enough effort. That's good. Force? No, you don't force effort, unfortunately. You don't. You could exert effort. It sounds a little bit. Actually, I'm not seeing the idea here, so I'm going to just begin it. Apply. Apply, as Toby's put there, and Gukarat as well, and Kamiko. So you apply effort. You wouldn't force effort. You wouldn't really. You could exert effort, but it seems a bit too strong here. But apply enough effort. That's a really nice way to show collocation. Okay, now we're just missing the in some cultures. So what you can either do is put it at the end here, and maybe you can paraphrase with something like, in some parts of the world. But then that seems a bit strange. It's like you only apply effort in some parts of the world. So better really to put it up here. So we'll read this out. It is common for children in some parts of the world to be presented with the idea that they can accomplish anything if they apply enough effort. Various cultures, I suppose, is okay as well. We try and avoid the word cultures, but it's quite tricky, so I've changed it to parts of the world. Okay, this is a discussion essay, so we really only need one more sentence. And remember, this sentence will not include an opinion. It will simply include a plan. How do we start a plan sentence? Exactly. Good. Yeah, and you could say discuss, you could say explore, highlight, argue, lots of different options. Explore is one of my favorites. I don't know why, but I quite like that one. So this essay will explore. Now, quite simple, keep it simple. What's another way of saying the advantages and disadvantages? Okay, yeah, we've got the benefits and drawbacks. Now here's the trickier part. Here is the part that stops this from being a template and makes it more precise to the task itself, which is important if you want to push up to a band 9. How do you finish this sentence and make it specific to the task? I'm going to help you by adding the relative pronoun. You could use an of. I'm going to think of a which here. Which can give you a little bit of help. Result, yeah, result, you could actually use Manaz. I've not gone with results. I'm thinking of a different one, not emphasize, but it's like result. Emerge, well done, Murasa, good. Emerge from, and then basically you want to paraphrase this part here. Such a message, yeah, that could be good. I think I'd like to see the verb in here just to emphasize that we are passing that message on. It's not just the message itself, but passing it through. So maybe like sending such a message, but definitely the referencing in terms of the such a, that's excellent. I like that. There's that nice cohesion. It's a little bit more academic, a little bit more sophisticated sounding. Quickly read this through. It is common for children in some parts of the world to be presented with the idea that they can accomplish anything if they apply enough effort. This essay will explore the benefits and drawbacks which can emerge from sending such a message. Now, you wouldn't say receiving, Justin, just because the task itself talks about the giving. It's about the giving, not the receiving. Arguably the same thing, but you want to try and stay as close to the task itself as possible, really. Okay, now, how do we start the first body paragraph? Good. To begin with the positives. Good. And a little team effort there with Manaz and Toby. To begin with the positives, and then we want the comma. Now, here we go. We've got our plan. That's what it's there for. Strong work ethic. Remember the template here. So you would say something like, in fact, yeah. So we want to basically paraphrase this whole idea. Sending such a message. Basically, you want to paraphrase this. How could you paraphrase sending? What's another word for send? Well, it's not quite the same. What's the noun? Because you wouldn't say the delivering. You could say delivering this message, or you could say the delivery of this message. So either delivering this message or the delivery of. It's quite nice to throw some nouns into your essay to mix it up with the verbs. You want to show your ability with word formation, word class, things like that. It's going to improve your score in lexical resource. So the delivery of this message, what will it do? Or not what will it do, but what should it do? What might it do? Remember to avoid these generalizations. Might contribute, maybe. All of these are good. Lead to, impose. The problem with all of these verbs is that what I want is to see the word children afterwards. And I can't say lead to children. I suppose you could say lead to children developing, but contribute with children doesn't really work so well. Encourage children. Let's go with encourage. Might encourage children to develop. And here is where we don't need to even think. We just follow it through, except to think about one thing. Is this, the way that it's being used here, is this a countable noun or an uncountable noun? Good. Everybody is mostly telling me countable, which is correct. It's a countable noun, the way that it is used here. So we want an article. So a strong work ethic. Great. To begin with the positives, the delivery of this message might encourage children to develop a strong work ethic. Perfect. Now we look back to the plan. We have an E. So how do we start the next sentence? For instance, how can we use work ethic for children? Everybody has a work ethic. I mean, once you're old enough to understand what work is, which children are old enough to do, you don't have to be an adult to have a work ethic. You can be a child with a strong work ethic. And besides, it's about development as well. So this is like the beginning of it. So don't worry about that. Exactly as Nishal says, their study is also work. So, for instance, now I think it was it Nishal, maybe Manaz? I got a question just that I was answering today actually. about this trickiness when you're referring to children or adults or whoever it is in an example and wondering which pronouns to use. So this is a really good opportunity to demonstrate how this works. So let's say this is a child. We go with the who. Okay, a child. And now we don't have to worry too much about this. So Lida, you're actually on the right path there. I would prefer to see this in the plural form, to be honest. It will make it easier in the long run. I'm just going to write this in the singular to give you an example. First of all, which tense do I want to use? Am I going to be using the present simple, the past simple, the present perfect? Remember, we want to link the past, being told you can achieve anything, with the present. The present perfect, as Nessar there says, because we're trying to combine these two ideas. So a child who has been told that studying hard enough can, and then we come in with a precise example, can help them pass a maths test. Notice all these collocations here. You've got past tense. The vocabulary here shouldn't be too complicated, but do let me know if anything's tricky. Arun Kumar, the in flying colours, it should be with flying colours, but regardless, that is an example of an idiom that I would feel is inappropriate for an academic essay. You might get away with it in the general training, but I wouldn't recommend it for the task itself. It's a little bit too informal. So a child who has been told that studying hard enough can help them pass a maths test. What? Carry on from here. Is likely to do well? Yeah. Can we come up with try and use that language that we looked at earlier? Remember to look back at the plan. Yeah, simply as Elizabeth put there, it's likely to persevere. Let's say instead of give up, or you could make it a direct comparison, is more likely to persevere than a child who simply has not. Is more likely to persevere. You may be more specific. So here is where you've got this idea about the gendered pronouns in his studies. Okay, should it be his? Should it be her? Should it be his, her? Should it be there? And there is this confusion a lot of the time about which you should use. The honest answer is they're all correct. None of them are wrong. You're able to use any of those. The problem is just what one feels right. So a lot of the time what happens now is we use there because it's more politically correct. Let's say it was very typical not so long ago to always use his. But of course that's, that is demonstrating a preference for the male gender, which we shouldn't do. We should try and cover both. So you could either do a his, her. The problem is it looks a bit wordy. It doesn't look, it doesn't look very nice on the page. So you can use there. Now bear in mind with there, that applies to singular children as well. So you've got a child. It's okay to use that plural. That is okay. But sometimes it's just easier to just write children. But when you've done that, do make sure that you go and you change those auxiliary verbs as well. Children who have been told that studying hard enough can help. In fact, you can see that I've done it here actually. I didn't even notice. Help them pass a maths test are more likely to persevere in their studies than children who have not. Or yeah, Arun Kumar's got a nice idea though, and Justin, you've put it in there as well. Then those who have not. That's a great way of avoiding repetition and showing some referencing as well. The more than, where's the more than twice? I can't see a more than twice personally. I've got more. So are more likely than those who have not. Seems to be okay to me. Okay, we'll come up against that again later with the basketball player example. But basically, there isn't really a wrong answer here. Most of them are okay. I personally don't like the his/her technique. The other choice I gave to I think it was Manaz was to, if you're going to use two examples, one for the first body paragraph, one for the second, maybe use a his in the first paragraph and a her in the second. There's nothing wrong with doing that. That's become more common recently as well. Arun Kumar, I would not recommend using kids. I also wouldn't recommend using youngsters. Just use children. There is really no problem with repeating the word children. Occasionally you get the opportunity to use a referencing device like those, but using kids or youngsters, it just looks a bit forced. It looks like you're overcompensating for something, like a lack of vocabulary. Children is fine. It's one of those words that inevitably ends up being repeated. Occasionally try to use the singular. Use a child, children. Young people, sometimes, yeah, that can be okay, particularly if you're talking about teenagers. But yeah, kids is too informal and youngsters just sounds a little bit forced. Right, let's move into the result sentence. How do we start it? Yeah, Toby, young children. Again, though, only if the task says young children. There's nothing here that says it's only young children we're talking about. So young children's too precise here. How do we start a result sentence? As a result, good. Remember we got that comma as well. So as a result, keep this sentence nice and simple. What's going to happen? Remember, we're now in a plural, so it's going to make it a bit easier. Good. Keep going. They can look at your plan. We're really only missing one word here. There you go. Something's got it there. They are more likely to succeed. You might be a bit more specific. Something like that. Okay. So as a result, they are more likely to succeed in their exams, in their education, whatever you want to write there. Yeah, okay, so we've got, okay, that's a good point. More likely has appeared twice. Oh, Justin's got a nice idea already, likelihood. How do we put likelihood in there instead? This is going to change quite a lot here. They have, but again, we want to change the comparative. A greater chance, you could say. But essentially, yeah, we want that greater. Now, how do we carry it on? We have the word succeed. How do we carry on from here? Do we say to succeed? You could say of success, Elizabeth. Yeah, let's try and keep the verb just for argument's sake rather than the noun. So you would not say to, this is a very common mistake. To say to succeed is a very common mistake. We don't want that. As Elizabeth said, we want the of. Now you can either use the noun, but if you want to use the verb, you just make sure you put it in the ing form, okay? So you use that gerund afterwards. As a result, they have a greater likelihood of succeeding in their exams. Okay. Brilliant. Now let's carry on. How do we continue? How do we add another point? Good. In addition, so we've got raise self-esteem. Any ideas on how we could turn that into a sentence? So you could look at, you could switch. Don't worry about the another part because this is already turning. It'll probably turn into quite a long essay anyway. So you can do this sentence in one of two orders. So you could say they can improve their self-esteem. A little bit simple, I would say. I'd return to the message, like let's say something like giving this message to children can help to improve their self-esteem. So that's one order, but do bear in mind you could put it the other way around as well. You could say the self-esteem of children who have been given this message may be higher. There's lots of different ways that you could do this. Alternatively, the self-esteem is likely to be higher among children who have been given this message. There's lots of different sentence structures that you could take here. Do try to think about that when you're thinking about mixing up sentence structure, thinking about grammatical complexity. It's an important thing to consider. So let's just go with this one. In addition, the self-esteem of children have been given this message may be higher. Now this is an example, this is a explaining support sentence. So how would I begin it? This is because, good Samantha, good. This is because they should have, again, I'm not generalizing here, should not is in advice, but is in expectation, let's say. They should have more confidence that their efforts will produce, and again, I'm not saying they will produce, but that they have the confidence that their efforts will produce. It's not a generalization here. Will produce desired results. Good. Their desired results. Make sure you keep the possessive pronoun as well. They should have more confidence that their efforts will produce their desired results. And this can lead to improved mental well-being. We've got improve earlier, haven't we, I think? No, I think I changed it. Improved well-being due to higher belief in. Now here is the word that I wanted us to think about and no one's come up with it yet. Basically, autonomy. So this, well done Justin, Barak there as well. Autonomy, where you're in control of what you're doing, of your life. It's this idea of free will and being completely in command. If you do something, if you do A, B will happen. You're having that confidence, that self-belief that that's happening. So that is not essential to this essay whatsoever, but it's inserting the kind of vocabulary that's going to help you jump to those higher scores. So do try and consider when you see your task and you're thinking about overall, what is this task about? Try to just come up with a little brain, or what they call it, a brainstorm in your mind about the best words that you know and see if you can find ways to insert them into the essay. Great. Now, how do we move on to the second body paragraph? Self-autonomy doesn't really make sense, Arun Kumar, because autonomy is included in the idea of self, or self is included in the idea of autonomy. Turning to the negatives, on the other hand, however, let's keep it simple, we'll use a however. But all of those are fine as well. Okay, how do we carry on? There are some negatives to consider. The problem with, yeah, you could do that. Let's go with that. There are some negatives to consider. How do you carry on from here? Here you've got that good opportunity to use that relative clause, that comma. 4 words there. This expression. This is a really nice little construction to remember for your topic sentences. Comes in very useful. So you could use it in the first one. There are many important positives to consider, one of which is this. Another nice way to put it is chief among them. That's like saying the most important one is, but we'll keep it simple. I say simple, this is really nice, but yeah. One of which is, and then you carry on. One of which is that this message might. Now, I saw a really nice verb someone mentioned earlier beginning IN. It's like to input, not input, but instill. Good, Elizabeth. So instill, good to see the single L there as well. And now, how do we use the verb instill? What follows it? What preposition? Or do we go straight to a noun? What happens here? Good, Fong's got that then. So not necessary, so to doesn't work, and you don't use into. Into feels instinctive here, but it's actually just in. So instill in, and then you move to exactly as Arun Kumar's put there, you put in the person or the group of people that it is affecting. Because we've started a new paragraph, I'm going to refer back to children, instill in children, and then we move straight to are. In fact, what have we got here? Is this a, hopefully you guys all know it's a countable noun. An unrealistic, remember unrealistic Arun Kumar there, an unrealistic worldview. But I can take out that space there really. I think both are actually okay, but I'm not getting a spell check there, so worldview. An unrealistic worldview. How do we carry on from here? We've got another example. Make sure you do not repeat the cohesive device from before. Simran, just use to illustrate. Rather than to illustrate that, cut the word count a little bit, just to illustrate, comma, and then you carry on. So to illustrate. Now, again, we've got a very similar example to last time. Think about the same kind of grammatical construction. Try not to go straight into a basketball player, Arun Kumar. Keep with the children, first of all. If a child, okay, let's move to the singular this time. Let's see what happens. If a child, what's the grammar we want? Has, good, we want that present perfect. Now, the tricky thing here is that we want to avoid repeating has been told that trying hard enough. What we can do instead is say something like maybe this, has been led to believe that try and maybe use words that we've used before. It's been a little bit of time. Good, Arun Kumar, you got efforts there. That's a nice idea. Has been led to believe that, let's say, with sufficient effort, we can use two little commas here just to improve the flow. If a child has been led to believe that with sufficient effort, he could become, equally, we could say she could become, either one is fine. Just make sure you're consistent, make sure you use the same pronoun throughout. Might be easier here, if a child has been led to believe that they could become, either one is, yeah, as I say, whatever you prefer. They could become a basketball player. Important that we add a professional here, to be careful with the spelling as well. What's going to happen? What I think is going to happen here, actually, the way that I've written this up is I think these two sentences are going to combine. Just keep that in mind. This part is probably going to come next. What's going to happen to them? How are they going to feel and why? They would end up, be careful, Sentil, if you're using the would, they may end up, let's say, or they could end up, if I used could earlier, didn't I? They may end up stressed and frustrated. I've taken the nouns, I've just turned them into adjectives. Why? They may end up stressed and frustrated. Why? It's not because of the pressure. Come back to that idea about the height. Good. So we said that due to the physical limitations. And then you can bring in the such as height. And then you're bringing in also a defining relative clause. Notice it's defining. There is actually a comma here, but that's only due to this little section in here. If you took that out, that would actually just be no comma. Due to the physical limitations which cannot be altered by what? What's this whole essay about? Hard work, good. So that's well done for sticking with that, guys. That was a really tricky sentence. It was supposed to be easier, but actually what we ended up doing was combining these two sentences together, and then you've got these lovely mixture of clauses in here, which is great. So let's just read it out. It might make it a little bit easier to follow. If a child has been led to believe. Also, by the way, notice you don't have the A in here. It's not like read, read, where you keep the A. With lead, led takes out the A in the past and in the present perfect in that form. To illustrate, if a child has been led to believe that with sufficient effort they could become a professional basketball player, they may end up stressed and frustrated due to the physical limitations such as height, which cannot be altered by, we may even add another possessive pronoun in there, cannot be altered by their hard work. Hopefully you can all follow that. It's actually very easy for a native speaker to follow. There's nothing wrong with that sentence. It's just quite complex, but in a way that's easy to follow, let's say, hopefully for you guys as well. Right, so we've only got to add one more disadvantage. How can we add it? Again, remember not to repeat cohesive devices. Furthermore, in fact, I'm going to give you something separate here, something different. This is not going to apply to all. What adjective could I use here? Remember, these 2 points we're making are quite similar. We want to, yes, good, Elizabeth. Yeah, so this suggests a related problem. This is a nice way to, it's just quite common expression to use when you're trying to suggest that these two problems are kind of linked. They are different, so you're covering the need for the plural, but they are quite related as well. They all stem from this worldview issue. So this suggests a related problem, which is, now the issue here is this judgment, failure, self to blame. Because of the time, I'm just going to give you a little bit more help than I have been. So we could say something like, making children believe that what? Come back to the judgment, failure later. That will probably go more in the example below. Making children believe what? That something individuals, good, who has themselves to blame? Define these people, define this they. What adjective could you use to define these individuals? That's all good. Unsuccessful, good. Svetlana, good. Unsuccessful. There's a few different words you could use here, but that's the one that's coming to mind. Not unstable, really. This is about achievement. So using words related to achievement is important. This suggests a related problem, which is making children believe that unsuccessful individuals only have themselves to blame. Now we're going to finish this last sentence here with a conditional. We've already used one here, so we are already addressing that need for a conditional sentence, which is good for grammatical complexity, but I want to add another one here. So this is kind of just to support the point. So if a child thinks that effort leads to success, what's a good adverb to mean that it always happens, or it happens quite a lot? Often. I want something stronger than often, but not quite always. Begins with R-E-L. You're not probably used to seeing this word in this context, but yes, as Elizabeth and Centils put it there and a few other people, reliably. If something reliably follows something else, it means that it happens so much that you can rely on it happening. You expect it, basically. So if a child thinks that effort reliably leads to success, in other words, if he believes that if he puts in effort, he can rely on himself being successful, reliably leads to success, that child Notice here, I don't need to write he or she. You're sort of emphasizing that it's an individual now. So that particular child, what does he think? That child, what? I'm going to give you, again, a little bit more language here. This is like blame. This is kind of like blame. I could say blame failure on a lack of, or as Fong, Elizabeth, Minaz have all written there, attribute. Notice though, attribute follows with to. So you blame something on and you attribute something to. Really important that you notice those verbs and those prepositions, the way they work together. I know they're really tricky and I know that a lot of the time they don't really seem to make any logical sense. But this one, attribute to, blame on. Keep that in mind. What's another word for effort? Also begins with E. Nassar, almost, but this is the tricky thing. How do you spell endeavor? A lot of people get a bit confused with it. Fong, Nishal, you're more on the right path there. So in EAV, doesn't seem like an EAV, but it is. And then an OUR, but I think that's just because that's the British spelling. I think for the American spelling, you could take out the U, and that would be fine as well. This is a British spell check. So, but just notice there's an EA in here. So if a child thinks that effort reliably leads to success, that child is more likely to attribute failure in a person's life to a lack of endeavor instead of, and then we use our plan. In fact, let's leave an adjective here as well. Instead of physical, we used physical earlier. What's a good alternative? Beginning with G. Yeah, genetic, good. Well done. Biological is good as well, whatever you prefer there, but try to avoid repetition of physical. We'll also avoid the repetition of limitations by writing factors. Good. Now I'm just going to add the adjective just to stress that it's more complicated than this simple thing of effort leads to success. Well, you could say complicated, but I'm not thinking complicated, I'm thinking complex. So these complex factors, and again, complex with factors, strong collocation. You're doing it again, you're showing that collocation. Really nice, strong sentence to finish. Let's just read that out together. If a child thinks that effort reliably leads to success, that child is more likely to attribute failure in a person's life to a lack of endeavor instead of complex financial, educational, or genetic factors. Good. Okay, Svetlana, no worries. Thanks for joining us today. You will be sent an email afterwards with the recording, so you can always watch this back. Hopefully we'll see you next month as well. Everybody else, I'm sorry that we are sort of overrunning here. We will just finish with the conclusion quickly. How could we start it? In conclusion, keep it nice and simple. Now, how can we carry on? Try to immediately create a complex sentence here. Although, good, that's the right idea. We want to start with an although or a while or whatever you want. Although, jump straight into it. Although children can develop. Now I want you to give me another word that could stand in for work ethic. Can develop. There's a nice word beginning, good. Well done, Elizabeth. Think you were there even before me. Can develop diligence. And there's another word that sort of relates to autonomy, but it's more to do with the good sense of well-being that comes from autonomy. I mentioned it once earlier. Everyone come on close. What's the noun? What's the noun? That's the verb. Because diligence is a noun, so we need another noun. Empower is the verb. Empowerment, good, well done. Empowerment. So although children can develop diligence and empowerment, and then we just, again, it's a bit tricky because you have to keep repeating this when you start a new paragraph, but we've got to do it again here. If they are told that working hard enough will, let's paraphrase, will give them what they want. Sort of the same thing as achieve what they want. You know, if you want to achieve it, then you want it. If that makes sense. We'll give them what they want. End the clause. Okay, we finished there. So we add the comma. Although this. Now here's a really nice sentence that you can use in any discussion essay that allows you to finish with kind of an opinion. It's an opinion that doesn't take a side, but it's slightly opinionated language in that it has a bit of emotive strength behind it. We write, these benefits should be what the risks of. We sometimes see these words in a opinion discussion essay. Good. Nishal, weighed. What's the preposition? Against. Good, Justin. Should be weighed against the risks of, and then you summarize the second body paragraph. Now, we didn't end up using the word judgmental earlier, so we can use it here, show a little bit more vocabulary. And unrealistic. Don't worry that we've sort of repeated that, unless anybody can think of another word for unrealistic. I can't think of one now, but we can say judgmental. What's another word for worldview beginning with P? Not pragmatic, that's an adjective rather than a noun. I want a noun. Perspective, good, well done everybody. Perspective on just on life in general. Now we're going to finish with another relative clause, defining relative clause, which, and I'm going to return to this idea that we used up here, such a message, don't want to repeat it. Let's say such an idea can, who can finish the last word? What word could I finish with? Elicit is good. Anybody else? I want a few different examples from as many people as possible. Can convey, also good. Wouldn't use, you might be able to use effect here. Propagate, probably a little bit too precise here. Pass on. I mean, you could simply use produce. You could use generate. But yeah, all of it, bring, rather than bring out, just bring would be fine. But generate, elicit, convey, produce, all of those are okay. Let's just go with generate here. I don't think there's too much repetition with that. So let's have a look at the word count. It's quite long. That's a longer essay than I was expecting, actually. I thought we were going to keep it under 300. So this is typically longer than I recommend. I think that's partly because there were a couple of sentences in the essay where we decided to make them a little bit longer than we were planning on. If you're, so this is to Arun Kumar and to everybody else, if your writing is strong and if you are confident in your writing ability and that you're able to write quickly, then don't worry about staying under 300 words. You do not get penalized for writing lots and lots of words. You only get penalized for writing under the word count. The problem is that the more words that you write, the less time that you have to finish the essay, number one, and number two, to go back and check for your errors. And also number three, to write in a way that doesn't seem rushed as well. So I usually recommend trying to finish within about 280 words. Potentially here, this was made a bit more difficult because we had to keep repeating this idea of children who are given the message that they can achieve anything if they can try hard enough. That was very difficult to condense into a couple of words. So I think that's part of the reason for the longer essay. We could have probably reduced the word count a little bit here, you know, drop a few adjectives here. I don't think we need all of these financial, educational and things like that, but they, you know, they show our vocabulary a bit more. But otherwise, I think that's great. I actually think this turned out to be one of the strongest essays yet. I really appreciate you guys giving me your ideas. You've worked really hard and definitely shown your abilities today because there were some really tricky aspects to this essay. Before we depart, I know we're sort of 15 minutes over as usual, sorry about that. If anybody has any questions, the best thing to do now is just to put them in the Q&A on Udemy, as we're sort of running out of time now. Remember, I will be giving everybody an email after this with the recording of the class. I'm afraid, Gorve, that it's only possible to send recordings to people who have signed up to live classes, just the way that Zoom really works. But most of the live classes are on Udemy at the end of some of the courses. Um, okay, I'm going to leave you guys there for today. Again, do get in touch if you need to email me. And hopefully you guys have a fantastic Christmas. If you are celebrating that, have an amazing New Year as well. And that's it for this really, really strange year of 2020. Been an odd one, hasn't it? But I'm really glad that, I've started doing these webinars and these live classes, and that will certainly carry on next year. So yeah, happy Christmas to everybody, happy New Year, and I shall see you all in January.